Thank you for joining. This is Emin the Mass Media. Please like, share, and subscribe. So today we're going to go ahead and talk about Governor Wes Moore and the bill that he vetoed. We're able to create a state commission to study reparations out there in Maryland. So let's go ahead and start with this article from the Baltimore Banner, written by Pamela Wood, 5/16/2025. So that is May 16th, 2025. The title of the article is Governor Moore Vetoes Bill Creating a State Commission to Study Reparations. Maryland Governor Wes Moore on Friday vetoed a bill requiring a study of reparations for the lingering effects of slavery and state-sanctioned discrimination, pledging he'll move forward with his own proposals. Quote, "Together we must take urgent action to address the barriers that have walled off black families in Maryland from work, wages, and wealth for generations," end quote. Moore, a Democrat, wrote to top lawmakers in his veto message. It was one of several bills Moore vetoed Friday, about 10 days ahead of a deadline to act on thousands of bills that were approved by lawmakers this year. Moore wrote that next year he'll work with lawmakers to introduce a package of policies, quote, end quote, to address those goals. Earlier in the day, delivering a graduation address at the University of Maryland, Eastern Shore, a historically black university, Moore said that he would make an announcement about closing the racial wealth gap on this year's Juneteenth holiday. The bill creating a commission to study reparations was a top priority of the Legislative Black Caucus of Maryland, a long-fought issue that brought one of the measure's sponsors to tears when it passed. All right, so for those who don't know what's going on out here in California, I think we need to be very wary of especially when these politicians use the words, quote, a package of policies, because the quote unquote packages of policies that's currently going on out here in California, without mincing words, is just straight trash. Okay, so I know last year and this year, when the California Legislative Black Caucus mentioned their packages regarding reparations, at least with Senator Bradford and introducing the American Freedmen Agency along with the fund, I mean, there was something there. There was, something where it was going to benefit the community. This year, unfortunately, here in California, with bills SB 518, as well as which would create the bureau underneath the California DOJ, along with basically a study bill with no end date, and that's SB 437 out here in California, is just going to continue the shenanigans. I'm not going to mince words anymore. I'm not going to pretend like everything's good with these bills, because they're just not. So anyway, let's continue. Wesley Watende Omari Moore, born October 15th, 1978, is an American politician, businessman, author, and veteran, serving as the 63rd governor of Maryland since 2023. Moore was born in Maryland and raised primarily in New York. He graduated from Johns Hopkins University and received a master's degree from Wolfson College, Oxford, as a Rhodes Scholar. After several years in the U.S. Army and Army Reserve, he became an investment banker in New York. Between 2010 and 2015, Moore published 5 books, including a young adult novel. He served as CEO of the Robin Hood Foundation from 2017 to 2021. Moore authored The Other Wes Moore and The Work. He also hosted Beyond Belief on the Oprah Winfrey Network and was executive producer and a writer for Coming Back with Wes Moore on PBS. Moore is a member of the Democratic Party. He won the 2022 Maryland gubernatorial election, becoming Maryland's first African-American governor and the third African-American person elected governor of any U.S. state. Moore was born in Tacoma Park, Maryland in 1978 to William Wesley Moore Jr., a broadcast news journalist, and Joy Thomas Moore, a daughter of immigrants from Cuba and Jamaica and a news media professional. So as you can see on the screen, here is the Maryland Legislative Black Caucus. The Legislative Black Caucus of Maryland, LBCMD, was founded in 1970. The membership of the LBCMD is comprised of the 66 black legislators within the Maryland General Assembly, making it the largest state legislative black caucus in the nation. The initiative of the Legislative Black Caucus of Maryland is to work to improve the quality of life for black Marylanders by taking appropriate legislative and administrative action directed towards the improvement of living, working, housing, health, and educational conditions of people in respective communities of color. Stimulating and developing economic growth within black and minority communities through research and the development of economic tools to stimulate minority-owned and operated businesses. By drafting and sponsoring legislation to address constituent needs and by examining all bills that affect the black populace, LBCMD acts as a legislative body on behalf of the black community. The caucus also presents a black perspective to the legislature and advocates public policies that promote black progress. Additionally, LBCMD serves as a research study group to generate pertinent data in support of appropriate public policies to advance growth and opportunities in Maryland's black community and other marginalized communities. All right, so if you want more information on the Legislative Black Caucus, you can go ahead to their website. That's marylandblackcaucus.com. So as you can see, the bill SB Senate Bill 0587, the bill to study reparations out there in California. The study bill out there in Maryland, we're not in California, get it right. Out there in Maryland, as you can see the timeline, it passed in both chambers, as they call them, out there in Maryland, and then ended up going to the governor's desk, as you can see, and it ended up getting vetoed. Looks like this bill was sponsored or authored by Senators Muse, Augustine, Brooks, and M. Washington. Let's see who these authors are. All right, so one of the authors is Senator C. Anthony Muse. He's a District 26 out there in Prince George's County. Another sponsor or author is Senator Malcolm Augustine. He's a District 47, also out there in Prince George's County. You have Senator Benjamin Brooks. He's in District 10 in the county of Baltimore. And then you also have Senator Mary Washington. She's out there in District 43 of Baltimore City and Baltimore, Maryland. And all these authors are of the Democratic Party. All right, so Senate Bill 587. Let's see what this bill's about, and let's see what the governor but actually vetoed. All right. Senate Bill 587 by Senators Muse, Augustine Brooks, and M. Washington. Introduced and read first time January 23rd, 2025. Assigned to Education, Energy, and the Environment. Committee report favorable with amendments. Senate action adopted. Read second time February 26, 2025. An act concerning state government, Maryland Reparations Commission. For the purpose of establishing the Maryland Reparations Commission to study and make recommendations relating to appropriate benefits to be offered to individuals whose ancestors were enslaved in the state or were impacted by certain inequitable government policies and generally relating to the Maryland Reparations Commission. Section 1, be it enacted by the General Assembly of Maryland that in this section the following words have the meanings indicated. Commission, quote unquote, means the Maryland Reparations Commission. Individuals impacted by historical Inequality means individuals having origins in any of the black racial groups of Africa and individuals whose ancestors were enslaved in the state or impacted by inequitable government policies. Okay, so this is a little troubling here. Individuals having origins in any of the black racial groups of Africa. Yeah, that could be pretty widespread. So we don't know if they're going to be talking about specifically about black Americans. But anyway, let's continue. Inequitable government policy means federal, state, or local government policies during the periods commonly known as the post-Reconstruction era and the Jim Crow era, 1877 through 1965, that have led to economic disparities based on race, including housing segregation and discrimination, redlining, restrictive covenants, and tax policies. There is a Maryland Reparations Commission. The commission consists of 2 members of the Senate of Maryland, one of whom is a member of the Legislative Black Caucus, appointed by the President of the Senate. 2 members of the House of Delegates, one of whom is a member of the Legislative Black Caucus, appointed by the Speaker of the House. The Comptroller or the Comptroller's designee, the State Treasurer or the Treasurer's designee, the State Archivist or the State Archivist designee, 1 member of the Maryland Center for History and Culture, designated by the President of the Maryland Center for History and Culture, 1 member of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, designated by the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People Maryland State Conference President. 2 employees of historically black colleges and universities in the state who have expertise in the history of slavery, 1 of whom represents a private college or university, and 1 of whom represents a public college or university designated by the Maryland Legislative Black Caucus. A representative of the Maryland Black Chamber of Commerce, designated by the President of the Maryland Black Chamber of Commerce. A representative of the Baltimore Chamber of the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, designated by the local board president. A representative for the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, designated by the President of the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. A representative of the Maryland Lynching Truth and Reconciliation Commission, designated by the chair of the commission, and the following members appointed by the governor: a mental health expert, 2 historians with expertise in researching the impacts of enslavement and housing segregation, a representative of a religious institution that serves a community with a high minority population, an attorney with expertise in civil rights law or constitutional law, a representative of an African American financial institution, and 2 members of the general public. The commission shall select from among its members a chair and a vice chair. A member of the commission may not receive compensation as a member of the commission, but is entitled to reimbursement for expenses under the standard state travel regulations as provided in the state budget. The state archives and the public college or university represented under subsection C8 of this section shall jointly provide staff for the commission. The commission shall study and make recommendations relating to appropriate benefits to be offered to individuals impacted by historical inequality. On or before January 1st, 2027, submit a preliminary report of its findings and recommendations to the governor, and in accordance with sections 2-1257 of the state government article, the General Assembly, and on or before November 1st, 2027, submit a final report of its findings and recommendations to the governor, and in accordance with sections 2-1257 of the state government article, the General Assembly. In conducting the study required under paragraph 1 of this section, the commission shall examine reparations payments made and benefits offered in the United States by the federal government, states, cities, religious institutions, and colleges and universities. Types of benefits appropriate for reparations, including official statements of apology, monetary compensation, property tax rebates, social service assistance, licensing and permit fee waivers and reimbursement, down payment assistance for the purchase of residential real property, business incentives, child care, debt forgiveness, and higher education tuition payment waivers and reimbursement. The history of slavery in Maryland and the number of individuals whose ancestors were enslaved in the state. Inequitable government policies, the size of the impacted populations, and how public and private institutions benefited from these policies, and any other topic deemed appropriate by the Commission. Recommendations made by the Commission under paragraph 1 of this subsection shall include common procedures for evaluating evidence of the lineage of potential recipients, information necessary to be included in any application to verify lineage and receive reparations, eligibility requirements for applicants, if any, including appropriate methods of demonstrating eligibility, a process for approving complications for benefits, an estimate of the costs associated with awarding any type of reparations recommendations by the Commission, and if monetary compensation is a type of reparations recommended by the Commission. The amount of monetary compensation recommended and method of calculating the amount, including as appropriate, the length and conditions of the enslavement of individual or individuals from the applicant is descended, or the level and impact of the economic disparity suffered. Potential sources of funding, including fees paid by private businesses and organizations in the state that have benefited from the institution of slavery or inequitable government policies. The feasibility of creating and administrating a reparations fund, and appropriate methods for distributing the recommended compensation, including the use of fiscal agents, business incubators, community development corporations, credit unions, or other community institutions. The Commission may seek the assistance of state agencies in conducting the study or making recommendations under this section. To the extent authorized by the law, the state agency shall assist the Commission in a request made under this subsection. And be it further enacted that this act shall take effect July 1st, 2025. It shall remain effective for a period of 3 years, and at the end of June 30th, 2028, this act, with no further action required by the General Assembly, shall be abrogated and of no further force and effect. I think two of the things that stand out for me is one, regarding the NAACP. I believe that no organization should be involved in a reparations commission, or at least not named in the commission bill. That would include state, local, state, and federal. As well as, I didn't see any language in there saying that the federal government is still responsible for paying reparations, or creating some type of reparations for American freedmen, those who descend from U.S. chattel slavery in the United States and once emancipated in this country. So those are the two biggest things of note. But if anybody else has anything to say, please drop it in the comments. We would greatly appreciate it. So according to slavery.msa.maryland.gov, was Maryland a slave state? Yes. Officially from 1664 to November 1st, 1864, and the passage of the Maryland Constitution, race-based slavery was legal. All right, so were white people enslaved in Maryland? White, black, and indigenous people were all subject to indentured servitude in Maryland from the time of the initial arrival of the Ark and the Dove, but only persons of African descent, however, were ever legally condemned to slavery. Was slavery in Maryland less harsh than any other parts of America? Slavery in Maryland could be as brutal as any other region of the Americas. Treatment was subject to the whims of the owner. Was it illegal in Maryland for enslaved people to read and write? There was no legislation which specifically prohibited enslaved people to read and write. It was, however, strongly discouraged. Famously, Samuel Green was arrested for, quote, knowingly having in his possession a certain abolition pamphlet called Uncle Tom's Cabin, not for having the ability to read the book. After his discovery, Frederick Douglass's owner's wife was forbidden by her husband to continue teaching the enslaved children or child to read and write. Douglass had already retained enough knowledge to spark his interest and eventually became renowned for his literary and oratorical skills. Was interracial marriage considered illegal in Maryland? Marriage and the bearing of mixed race children was illegal and incurred serious punishments until the law was repealed in 1967. Was cotton the main crop sold everywhere slavery existed? Tobacco, not cotton, was the main crop sold in Maryland. In the early years of settlement, tobacco was virtually a source of commerce, and a barter in exchange for services, and penalties for crimes were assessed in pounds. So let us know in the comments what you think. Do you think Governor Wes Moore of Maryland should have vetoed the bill, or do you think he should have passed it? So go ahead, hit that like button, like, share, and subscribe, and we will see you next time. We're out. Peace and reparations.